It was Long Island in the summer and Florida in the winter. It's a hard to beat that combination. So it was great. And like I said, and Frank and I, my brother, he's 5 years older than I am, we were in the winning dead heat at Roosevelt, which was a kind of a great thrill, and some of the great memories. And remember Albatross? He came down just starting his 3-year-old career, and he came to Roosevelt in a 3-year-old open, and I beat him with a horse called Colonial. And that was at that time, I was a great feeling because he hadn't got beat the rest of that year, I think, when he went on as a 3-year-old to win everything. And then there's a lot of great moments there, and all the restaurants and all the good times we had up there, and raising the family. And my wife, we've been together so far 57 years, and if she don't start behaving, it might be the last 57. Yeah.
Billy, so didn't you and Frank become the first brothers to dead heat at Roosevelt?
I don't know. It might have been Allan and Billy Myers. I don't know if I think somebody told me that they were the first. I said, we were the first, and then some guy came up and said, Allan and Billy Myers were the first to dead heat at Roosevelt. Maybe at Roosevelt, I think Roosevelt might have been, but dead heat. The wine's good. The weather's good. We're waiting to get the rail rolling. I'm ready to go. I've got 4 horses. I've been training here, racing at Pompano. I'm ready to go. And I'm going to go to Tioga for the summer. So I hope everything goes. But like I said, everybody thinks of Roosevelt would never close. And you know what happened. The rest is history.
Yep. Thanks for the thorough introduction there. Appreciate it, though, too, with Freddie, pick another guest, though, too.
Okay, I'm going to pick CeCe. CeCe, okay. You're picked.
CeCe, just unmute yourself. Wait, let me see if I can do it for you. No, you got to just unmute yourself, bottom left-hand corner. Yep, right there. Yep, there you go. Okay. Take it away.
CeCe, tell us what it was.
Ready.
Tell us what it was like growing up with your dad, and I'm going to pick one story out. One story about you when you were the marshal with qualifiers for the Children's Day.
Well, first of all, let me say I have the highest respect for the people that are the marshals. Twiggy was a very good friend of mine, and she did an amazing job and made it look so easy because it's not. And I didn't even have to rescue anybody. I just had to try to stay on, which was hard enough. But my dad thought it would be kind of fun to have me go over and be the marshal. I think it was a Saturday morning. And we brought my horse, which was a show horse. It was a horse I used to take and do equitation in horse shows. Has never seen horses with sulkies behind it, never saw water trucks or any of the other things. So I got out on the track and got completely run away with. And as soon as those horses came up behind her, she just took off. And I was trying to keep my composure, and there's pictures in the newspapers of like, I mean, I looked like I was absolutely terrified, which I was. And I was like, Daddy, don't ever make me do that again, ever. I don't know if anybody remembers or was in one of the sulkies behind me, but it was not a fun thing to do. Thank God nobody needed an emergency handled because I was having a hard enough time just staying on.
And tell us a little bit about your dad.
Well, my dad was a very colorful character. And he loved the racetrack. The racetrack was his baby. And in fact, if you notice the picture behind me, these are the Courier and Ives pictures that were hanging in my dad's den that were there, with him every single day. So it's really kind of nice that I have them here, and they're such a good reminder. But he lived for that racetrack. He would go there all day long, come home for dinner, sometimes with us or sometimes go back to the track for dinner, shoot a couple golf balls on the front lawn, inevitably break windows over at Joel Jason's house. That was a regular thing. He would just send them a blank check every month to cover all the windows he broke. And then he would go watch about 10 races and then come back to the house. And if we went with him, it was such a treat because we'd go up to the Cloud Casino and he'd always give us some money to bet. We couldn't go up and bet because we were too young. And he'd make bets for, actually, Tommy. Tommy is his name, Tommy Cohn? Does anybody remember Tommy? That was up at the Cloud Casino. Anyway, he would make bets for us. And even if we didn't win, my dad would have placed secret bets on other horses. So if our horse that we picked didn't win, we'd always win. So, and he loved having us with him. He loved having us be part of the racetrack. We'd go, if we didn't go to the Cloud Casino, we'd go over to the maintenance area and sit outside over there and watch the races. I mean, my whole childhood was spent at Roosevelt, either at the track at night or he'd make us go and actually pick up tickets. We'd clean the grandstands on Sundays. We'd go in there with big shopping bags and clean all the tickets that were loose just on the floor, because people would inevitably just like say, oh, my horse is losing, and throw away a ticket. And then we'd sit with the findings, all the winnings that were posted in the newspaper, and one of us would always have a winning ticket that we'd cash in for our $2.36 and be ecstatic about. But it was very different. I didn't have anything else that I can compare to except for the fact that we grew up at a racetrack. My brother and I were just over there all the time. I ended up with a lifelong love of horses. My brother did not. But my father, just the pride that he felt in that racetrack that's what we grew up with, just knowing how much he loved it. And he loved all the people there, and he knew all the people. He knew every single person that worked at that racetrack, and nobody ever felt they couldn't go in his office with anything they wanted to talk about. And, it wasn't until after he passed away that I went to one of the employees' picnics, and people came up to me and said, your dad was amazing because he knew every one of our kids, he knew every one of our names, and we never felt like he was unapproachable or he was somebody that wasn't in it for us. And it made me feel so good knowing that he loved every person and every aspect of that racetrack. So my greatest thanks to all of you who were part of it and raced there, and your love of it makes me feel so good because I know how much it meant to everybody, and I really appreciate every single person that had a part of that racetrack. So thank you, Freddie, for keeping that all alive. You've done an amazing job.
Thank you, CeCe. It's an honor. Your dad was like such a great person, and I knew your dad. He was just a great person.
Well, he had a great attitude, and just his sense of humor was priceless. And he had nicknames for everybody. I don't know if he had one for you, but every single person he came in contact with had some nickname, whether it was like Mustache Pete or I can't even remember, but every single person had. I mean, look at all the people that lived at our house, and they all had weird names, He took in people like people now take in stray animals. We had a house full of Uncle Andy. I still to this day don't really know who Uncle Andy was, but he lived with us till he died.
Well, we appreciate you being on tonight, though, too. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, great tribute to your dad. Thank you for that.
Okay,
Freddie, who's next on your list?
let's bring Donnie Dancer in.
Donnie, just unmute yourself on bottom left-hand corner and take it away.
Donnie, your dad was one of our great horsemen. He's a Hall of Famer. And tell us about your first experience at Roosevelt.
Donnie, just got to unmute yourself on bottom left hand on your screen.
On the screen.
There
you go. You got it, Donnie.
Oh, thank you.
Donnie Dancer. Take it away, Donnie.
Yeah. What was your question, Freddie? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said, what was your first experience at Roosevelt? And your dad was a great horseman, one of our greatest.
Many times coming there as a kid, and I'd give my dad company and come to the track at night when I was supposed to be sleeping, I guess, to get ready for school. the next day. But I can remember one time coming there, and I didn't feel good, and he put me into one of the rooms in the back to lay down, and I was very sick. I had like a little touch of flu, I guess. And throughout the night, he would continue to come in and check on me and see how I was feeling. And I couldn't have been more than like 8 years old, you know? And it was just, you know, something that I was very close to my dad, you know? And that's a memory that I always have. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Don. Let's move on to Joe Ricco.
Oh, Joe, just unmute yourself. Oh, and then you'll be. There you go.
Now, I first met Joe when we were probably teenagers up in Monticello at Dominic Macedoni's farm.
Ponderosa.
My dad had sent me up to Monticello that summer with 5 horses or 6 horses, something like that. We couldn't get stalls at Monticello until the stake races were over. So we ended up at Dominic Macedoni's farm called Ponderosa. And there were only like about 5 trainers there. Joe was one, Jimmy Marohn, John Barchi, myself, George Shade, and Dominic Macedoni. That was it. And we became friends at that particular point, have been friends ever since. But so Joe, the last picture I saw of you at Roosevelt Raceway, you were in one of those water things and being dunked into the water.
Yeah. Well, that's because all the big guys like Carmine and Donnie Dancer and them wouldn't do it. So I had to do it. But my first time, I went there probably in around 67. And the first time was with my brother. He worked for a guy by the name of Frank Malika. I don't know if anybody knows him. That was my first time there. I was amazed at seeing the barn area because it was like being in the country. And Frank Malika's barn was just, it was like Stanley Dancer's, barn. It was just perfect. Really clean, really pristine. And that was my first time there. And then I remember I went, good, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, someone just tune on and just got to mute yourself, whoever just came on, please. Thank you.
Allan Alkes, okay.
So then I went back in 69. My father he wasn't a horseman, but he was friends with Sid Mosea. And they had a horse racing we were in Freehold. And he had a horse racing Sid Mosea at Roosevelt. And I remember Harold Dancer was driving him, Sonny Dancer. And I begged them, please let me go. And they said, there's no room in the truck. And I said, I'll go in the trailer. Just put a bucket and I'll go in the trailer. I'll drive from Freehold in the trailer. And I was like 15. So they let me go. And the horse ended up winning. It was a great night. It was a great experience. That was my first time, my aha moment of Roosevelt Raceway. Loved the place. Then when I came down later from Monticello, it was probably around 77, I could just drive horses there. I could never get stalls there. And then a friend of mine met somebody and they got me in and I ended up racing there more like around 79, 80. I raced a couple of stake races there in 80 and then I moved down around 82. And I live here now. I live right in Westbury. It was a great experience.
One of the things that guys don't realize today is like back then we had to get stalls from the racetrack. In order to race at a racetrack, you had to have stalls there and your horses had to have stalls. Nowadays, they're at a farm and they can ship to any racetrack that they want. But there was a lot of politics played with getting stalls. Like sometimes you had to go in there on your hands and knees and beg that race secretary for stalls.
Oh, I tried to get into Yonkers, Roosevelt for years, and I could not get in. And for the love of God, I can't think of the guy's name. And I think he was partners with Billy Haughton in the insurance company.
Levy.
What was his name?
Burt Lang.
Burt Lang. Believe it or not, I had a guy that was a second trainer for me, and we're up in Monticello, and he says to me, Joe, I met this guy at the bar last night after the races. Yeah, he can get you into Roosevelt. And I said, it's impossible. He said, no. He said, just at the end of the meet, just give him your papers, because back then we had papers, and he'll get you in. And I just thought it was a joke. You know, he met a guy at a bar. Come on, seriously. And that's who we met, and that's how I got to Roosevelt.
Yeah,
I ended up.
if it was Bert, he was drinking vodka.
It was Bert Lang.
And it was at the Gamois.
No, it was at a place called Baxter's in Monticello. He was up there. I think he was
Billy
watching
Baxter.
a horse. It was a horse that he might have owned called Stan Bergstein. Billy would know. Did he own Stan Bergstein?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. So he was up there watching the horse Stan Bergstein, and he went to the bar afterwards, and he met my friend who, if you met him, he's a real character. And they hit it off, and he took the papers in and got me in. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We have so many stories that I'm sure all you guys can tell. So I want to make sure we get to everyone and be mindful of time though too. So Freddie, who's next on the list?
JT, are you on?
Who?
Tremblay?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I thought so. The reason I had to ask, the screen is really small and it says Lori Jane.
My wife. Hold on.
That's better. Now I know it's you.
I didn't say much at the racetrack. I'm still the same. I see Bob Cooper is on.
JT, you ended your racing career with a bad accident, if I remember correctly.
No, that was before that, but that didn't help. At the Meadowlands.
But
I went there to buy a horse and wound up in the hospital for 4 months.
your legs got messed up pretty bad in that, if I remember correctly.
Yes, indeed it did. Yeah, spent four months in a wheelchair and 2 years in rehab. But that's 88 to 90. Yeah, after this, it was time to get out.
But tell us your first story at RR, or a story about RR.
Or a horror story?
Oh, comedy.
No, there's no
baby.
horrors. It's what you make of it. Now listen, I've been playing hockey ever since, so what the hell? It couldn't have been that bad, you know? I've been hanging out with Joe too long. He makes me drink. You know?
Good wine, I hope.
Well, we go martinis. Listen, I'm the one to talk him into martinis. Yeah, but I went for the Red Cup. It's water in there. Everything else is good besides that. Best thing I've done is get out of the business and moved on. And I miss it every day like everybody else does. But it's just a matter of what you make of it afterward, you know?
And you still live on the island, is that correct?
Was that?
You still live on Long Island?
Yeah, I live in Oyster Bay Cove there in the area there. I got a nice little farm in here and don't work too hard. I got my own horses here. I got a triple and exacta straight up. Never miss it. You know, I got some good horses, Bob Cooper. Is that you, Bob?
Yeah,
Cooper?
I'm right here.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a long time. We own some good horses together.
Yep.
We got some good stories, but we can't tell them. That's a shame. Everything else is good besides that. I mean, like I said, I see Joe on a regular basis for the last 40 years. You know, and that's vacations and drinking. That's about the size of it. But yeah, not much else to be said. In Roosevelt, he was talking about getting stolen Roosevelt. When I got stolen Roosevelt, it was thanks to Mike Santa Maria. Larry Muller, well, you know, he looked at me. He says, "Take your sunglasses off," and I walk into the office. And then you can have stalls. Mike Santa Maria took care of the rest of it. That's how I got in there. It didn't help that I was working for Regine for a year and a half because we're not allowed to race in the same race or drive in the same race for a while. Small problem. I don't understand why, but could have been a mistake.
Well,
Everything else is good. You guys all look good.
Okay. We thank you for joining and sharing some of your stories too with us. So appreciate that.
No problem.
I see.
I'll zoom better next time.
I see a Joseph there. Is that Joseph Barbera?
He's got to unmute himself if that is him. But just grab on someone else if you can.
Okay. Allan Alkes.
bottom left-hand corner, please unmute yourself and take it away, Alan.
The store man was Jimmy Mitchell.
Before that, Calvin Coolidge. And a funny story, when Billy Mitchell, excuse me, Jimmy Mitchell replaced Calvin Coolidge, Buddy Gilmore said to me, he says, I don't know who I'm going to pay the rent to anymore.
All right, Alan's having, I think, oh, there you go. There you go, Alan. Take it away, Alan.
Am I here?
Yes,
Yes,
there you
sir.
go.
Go ahead.
How are you?
Welcome.
Yeah, like, listen, we had amazing times at Roosevelt Raceway. It was, you know, it was like a college campus for a bunch of misfits, and we all had a really good time. And, you know, we go to, that's Barry Farber I'm looking at. That's not me.
Beanie.
Beanie. But that's not me. I'm up here.
We all can see you, so you're good. Just keep we hear you perfectly, so.
Yeah, so, you know, we went out till 4 or 5 in the morning, then go back to the barn area and work all day, race all night, and then go back out drinking. And we just had a lot of parties and a lot of fun and, you know, a lot of friends. And, you know, we did a lot of things together. And there'll never be a racetrack or racing as it was in the 70s and 80s. It was the ultimate. And then, of course, in comes simulcasting and OTBs and kind of hurt the whole industry. And like Mike LeChance always said, there'll never be the friendships that people had back then as today. The guys really aren't the same. It's just not the same way of doing it, you know. Not only did we have our friends, but we had our friends' families. And, you know, Hervé, his kids, they played with my daughter. My father would bring them produce because he was in that business. And, you know, everybody just got along. Jocelyn, I just saw him at my tag sale. Right, Jocelyn? Yeah, we
Yeah, I wound up buying something from you there.
that's right. And we used to go, we run into each other at tag sales all the time. We love
You
it.
overcharged me.
I had nothing to do with anything. I had somebody do it. I didn't even know what you bought. What did you buy?
I have that horse thing, the standard bred thing.
Oh, okay. That was
I
nice.
recognize you. Very nice.
Yeah. And
I buy estate sales and I see them there all the time.
and it's just, you know, it's just a shame that the Roosevelt Raceway, the whole situation had to end. It was really enjoyable. And I think a lot of people would still be to this day that aren't in the business at any age would still be in if Roosevelt was racing, you know. It's just a really enjoyable time, and the racing was really good. And yeah, and really basically for most of those 70s and 80s, the best drivers in the world were there and the best trainers. It was the ultimate in horse racing. Well, the Meadowlands came in and a lot of guys ended up going over there. I didn't think the Meadowlands would be as good as Roosevelt and Yonkers, and that was a mistake. Was Mike LeChance and John Campbell kept telling me, oh, we got to go over there. It's going to be so much better. And I said, no, can't beat Roosevelt Raceway. It's the best of the best. But, you know, Meadowlands did take a bit out of, and then they fell apart because it was too big a racetrack, you know, the grandstands and everything for the population that was coming back to watch racing. You know, nobody paid for programs, nobody paid to park, nobody paid for food, and racetracks just couldn't exist. And then we're lucky that we are lucky enough now to have casino gambling put money into it. Otherwise, I think horse racing would be even in a bigger negative than it is now, you know. But like I just saw at Scioto Downs, they opened yesterday, and the horses are great, you know, really good for racing there. So, yeah, Roosevelt was great. What can I say? You guys all know it was great. We all had fun. Most of us went, you know, out partying all night. Andy Santarama, Jimmy McCardle, Perry Steinkohl, all the guys that were the meat and potatoes of harness racing at Roosevelt and Yonkers. The regular guys, Beanie, Jocelyn, these are the guys that were there, you know, every day working. Mike Forte, I see he was there we just had a great time, you know, barn area. And then we could tell a lot of stories of people claiming and getting mad at each other. Of course, that was pretty existing, you know. People got all upset about people. It was a claiming game, basically, and you can't get mad. You just had to get along. But yeah, we had our fights, we had our disagreements, but all in all, at the end of it, we all were friends, and we still are. And thanks to Freddie, we still are communicating in the new era of computers, because now we don't have to go anywhere but just sit at home and talk to everyone.
That online is awesome. Appreciate you sharing some stories though too.
What was that?
Okay,
Thanks, Alan.
Charlie, is Mike LaChance on the line with us?
Hold on, let me check. Is he coming in under Patrick's name or what?
I don't know.
I don't see him yet. I
Yeah.
don't see him yet.
Keep moving on. We have a lot more people still to get to. So who's on?
Right.
Who's the next person you want to give
Okay,
up?
let's go to Mike Forte.
Mr. Forte, where is he? Just unmute yourself and take it. There you go. Hey, Mike.
Hello, gentlemen.
Mike, well, you're still racing, correct?
Yes, I am.
And so how many left? Joe, you're still racing a little bit. Donnie, you race a little bit. I think you guys are about the only three, and Billy, you're racing Popfinger. So I think we got a very small group that are still racing today.
I'm still stable at the track too. I got a few horses at Yonkers. That's a rarity.
How do you feel like when you race today, and you're racing in front of an empty grandstand, when you used to race in front of 30,000 people?
Well, I'm used to it. It's not a whole lot different. I mean, a lot of people didn't ever have an effect on me, so it's not a problem. And you know, you're racing for the people you're racing for, so that's the same people are still watching that were always watching.
And what's your best Roosevelt Raceway story?
Oh, I don't know. I got. I mean, I started there. Brought an old horse there, put him right in the Old Glory sale at Yonkers, and worked for John Patterson for a year. He got hurt in a qualifier at Yonkers, and he had just claimed a horse that I picked up. The horse wasn't sound. The horse's name was Hidden Secrets, and the horse was just fantastic. He won the first 4 races. He won 3 of them, and I drove him, and it started me there, really. One horse got me started. And within a few years, I got a few horses, and I was doing the same thing I'm doing now, you know, working in the morning and racing at night.
We appreciate you joining us too. You know, I know I see Mike at the track every once in a while now in South Jersey. I don't see him as often, but appreciate you still in the game, still involved too, and doing your thing.
Yeah, well, it's what I do. I mean, other guys have gotten out because they had something else to do, but this is what I've been doing right through. And it's, you know, you have your ups and downs, and you struggle, and at times you're doing better. It's, you know, that's what it is. That's what this business is, and everybody can tell you pretty much the same thing. A lot of work, a lot of fun. You meet a lot of people, you know, that you're glad you met. And, you know, at this stage, it's, you know, you love the thing that you do.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you sharing some of your stories too. And Freddie, who do you have next?
Billy Haughton.
Oh, you're on. Billy?
Hello.
There's
Hey.
Billy.
Hello.
Billy,
We
you're
hear you,
on.
Billy. Take it away.
Now I've known Billy since we were kids. Like I've known a lot of the guys here since we were kids. But Billy, when he had his insurance company, his insurance office was right in the race secretary's office.
Oh, boy. Yeah, it was a good deal, Freddie.
Do we want to talk about the girl in the tree, or should we hold that off for a different time?
Well, I was going to ask you about the girl in the tree because it's been a long time since I heard the story and I really can't remember, but I think it was on the back stretch at Roosevelt.
Yes, that's a funny story, but we can't tell it. But we'll share it at another time.
Oh, okay.
What is your
Okay.
best Roosevelt Raceway story? You come from one of the greatest families.
Oh God, so many. Freddie, do you remember the barber shop?
Yep, Nick Matucci. Not
Do you remember
Matucci,
they had a pinball machine in there?
I don't remember that part.
It was
One
Nick
pinball machine.
Louie's dad.
It was great. And the barber shop and just all the people that were there. I was there every day. And I'd go with my dad in the morning and he'd work his butt off all day. And the best thing was going to lunch with Buddy Gilmore and Chappie. And, you know, one after the other, the whole stretch, Old Country Road, I think we covered every restaurant and bar once a week.
Sometimes twice.
Yeah. Apple Annie's, exactly. Can I name a few of them? Let me see.
No, we hit them all.
There you go, Freddie. Ready? All right. Gamois, that was on top. Apple Annie's, which, who just mentioned that? Cooper? Bob?
Yep.
Bombay Bicycle Club?
Yeah.
Rusty Scupper, Island Inn, Mimo's. How about Mimo's?
Yep.
Didn't your mom work at Mimo's?
Yep.
She was the best waitress I ever had in my life. She was wonderful. She was cheerful. Giulio Cesare.
Yep.
Remember that one?
There.
And Bob Cooper, who was the best racquetball player? Remember the racquetball courts right next to the Rusty Scupper? Who was the best racquetball player you ever saw?
We're talking to Eric?
You ready for this? Sandy Levy.
Oh, right.
That's what I was going to say, Sandy Levy.
I mean, who would think Sandy Levy was an athlete? He was a good driver, good trainer, but I never thought he could play racquetball. Oh my God, I got to school him. It was great. But they had everything there at Roosevelt. There was everything you wanted to do. Family, friends, bars, restaurants, great times.
Winner's Circle.
That was my memories.
Well, thank you for sharing though too. We got more people coming on too, so I'm going to have Freddie move on to the next person as well.
Okay, I'm looking for Jimmy Marohn.
Jimmy was on.
Hello.
There he is.
Hello.
Jimmy,
Hear
take
you,
it away.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I can hear. Hey guys, what's going on?
How you doing?
Man, I just listened to some great stories. I got some good facts now. Stuff I never even heard of. But I tell you, I was like, I didn't get there till, I worked for Billy Haughton, one of the best guys I think I ever worked for. 1967. I came to Roosevelt Raceway in a plane with a bunch of horses, and we landed at the airport. Benny Steele was there. Took us to Roosevelt. We slept in a shed row. I remember it was late March or early April, and we got in. It was cold, sleeping in the shed row. And I'll tell you the truth. You mentioned at the beginning of the program, one of the first families that I met was Ronnie and Bob Benton, because they were walking around checking the horses out from which came up from Florida, and they're nice. And then I just took everything in. Like I didn't know the office, I didn't know who Apples were, I didn't know anything. I'm 20 years old, from Ohio, never been out of Ohio, and I took care of Metal Pages, a groom, 67, and then I went on with a career, and I came back to Roosevelt, stable of horses, in 1978 as a trainer driver. And the barn area to me is the thing I miss the most, because after being in the business now for about 10 years, I had a lot of people that I just met. You meet a lot of people in this business. And Roosevelt was a good barn area. I had a good barn. I only had about 9 horses, but I had a nice office right by the backtrack. And during the day after your work was done, we'd walk around, people would walk around, and those are the best times that I can remember. It was really a great place. I remember the barber shop with Nick Martinez and the card games there. There were some great card games there too, boy. And then we just stayed right in there, and then we would go to the paddock and race. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And I met so many nice people, and I had a chance to I raced a lot of good horses. Roosevelt was good to me, really good to me.
Well, no, didn't you go out to California for a while with Bob Benkow and Jeff Gural?
Yes, I did. Jim Grundy, Bob Benkow. I think that was I forget that was before, I think. Yeah, I think that was 1971, because I worked after Haughton. I went to work for Lucian, and then kind of went on my own and went to work for like Bob Benkow, and I just wiggled back, I say in 78, and start racing, and everything about the place excited me, you know, because if everything's like new to you, and it was great. It was just great.
Yeah, and any experiences at the Gamois?
I had that was my second home. I remember Harry. I'd be in the table with Burt Lang and maybe Dell and a couple guys, and everybody started to leave, and I started to leave, and Harry would say, "No, don't go. I make spaghetti. Well, I said, "No, what a thrill that is! I'm in a Chinese restaurant, and Harry's looking to make us spaghetti at 2:00 in the morning." I said, "Harry, I gotta go." Sometimes I stay and eat the spaghetti. So it was a great place, a great walking in and out place. Great place.
Jimmy, can I say something to Jimmy?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's Billy. I just wanted to mention Burt Lang. He was mentioned before, but at the Gamois, we'd go there for lunch a lot. And Burt would always have, you ready for this? Chinese restaurant, a hamburger and peas. And I was like, what?
Really?
And Freddie, do you remember we'd always walk through the kitchen door?
Yeah.
If you walk through the kitchen door going in and leaving, you knew somebody. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I could add another story in here. Some of you guys may not remember. Billy Popfinger will remember. Cal Coolidge's wife. Billy Popfinger, where are you?
Hey, he's just muted though too, so just continue on. We still got another 50 people.
When kid come into the Gamois, everyone would leave through the kitchen. She could empty the bar out faster than anyone.
I did. Hey, Freddie, John Kopas.
Hey,
Just
John.
real quick, when Billy was saying about Bert and the hamburger and peas at the Chinese restaurant, I always laughed about the time Chappie took Teddy Wing and Billy O'Donnell to Julio Cesare's, and that was right after they had come down from, or Billy had come down from Saratoga. And so that night in the paddock, I said to Chappie, I said, "How'd you get along with the boys?" He said, "They're a fucking pair of hillbillies." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, took them to that beautiful Italian restaurant. They both ordered a cheeseburger and a glass of milk.
Now I'm going to go back to Billy and Julius Cesare's. Billy's dad took him over there with the international party for the Roosevelt Raceway International Trot. And
right.
Billy Sr. had to take off to race someplace in another state or whatever it was. And he left Billy there to pick up the tab.
Brandywine.
What was that tab, Billy?
Freddie, he had to go to Brandywine. We were having lunch at Roosevelt Raceway. He had to get in the car, drive to Brandywine to race. And he left me with the tab with a whole bunch of Italians and French people. And I think it was $600. It blew my mind. It was a lot of wine and champagne. I think we were there. In fact, Freddie, we had lunch and then an early dinner. So it was crazy.
That would have been about 6,000.
Oh, well, no, that nowadays it would be, yeah.
Hey, Freddie, I'm hearing a lot of...
600 was a lot for a little kid, you know, a young guy.
Hey, Freddie, I'm hearing a lot of stories about drinking. I'm assuming there were no breathalyzers done in those days, and it's probably a good thing.
Actually, there were breathalyzers.
Actually, there were, yeah.
Really, there were? Okay.
Oh, yeah, everyone passed.
You guys are talking a lot about food. Who remembers Herman Carbone's food?
Freddie, we
Matt.
still have, we're
Matt.
almost an hour into, we have like another 15,
Matt.
16 people.
Matthew.
Yes.
Okay.
It's Bill. I have to go. I just want to show you guys something. I live right now probably
This is one of our investors, Bill Sepple.
where the 5/8 pole was on Roosevelt Raceway. I'm sorry?
I said Bill's one of our investors. He actually lives on the Roosevelt grounds too.
I don't know if you can see this. It's down here. There it is.
There it is. Yep.
That's I think where that's the other side of Roosevelt Raceway from the Meadowbrook Parkway. Oh, you can't tell the way it goes, but that if you look, you can see it looks like a horse. It looks like a horse track because the guy who built this place, his name is Michael Dubb. You guys might have known him. He's a really big time racing guy. He owns a whole bunch of thoroughbreds. So when you guys are much older than me, so I'm much younger than you. I'm 78. So I never, I never raced the Roosevelt. I raced a lot at Yonkers Raceway, and I met Jim Marohn a couple of years ago over here where he works. So we have upstairs, and what I showed you there is a thing called the Cloud Casino. This is it's a condo, and upstairs they have the silks and pictures and programs from old Roosevelt Raceway events. So, for example, Del Insco's up there. You guys remember Del Insco? Stanley Dancer, Michael LaChance, John Campbell, and it's really terrific. But I just wanted to show you that. I really have no stories from Roosevelt Raceway. I just wanted to show you what it looks like. It's a beautiful place, and it was a bad deal the way they got rid of Roosevelt Raceway. Nassau County pulled some kind of deals here. Unfortunately, you guys got screwed, but we're all good. We're all healthy, and thanks.
Thank you, Bill, for joining. Yeah, Bill lives on the grounds too, so that's when I come back to Long Island, Bill, I'll definitely be stopping by your condo to check
One
out.
of you guys said you come from Westbury. Who came from Westbury? Joe?
Joe, Jocelyn doesn't live too far from Nassau.
Yes, I live in Westbury. You must live in Meadowbrook Point.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you live there?
No, I live in Westbury and Salisbury, not too far from where Jimmy Marohn lives.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Salisbury. Yeah, Salisbury Park area.
Yeah, I sell real estate in the neighborhood, so I know the Meadowbrook Point and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
from Westbury. It's a great area. Very nice.
That's house.
I live in Merrick.
All right, good.
You live in America, so we have a bunch of Long Islanders here, huh?
Yep.
I want to say hello to Barry Farber. Hey, Bean.
We're gonna try to get to everyone though too, because I'm trying to be mindful of your time.
I'm here.
Almost an hour in, but Bill, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you coming
You're
on.
welcome. Sure.
Okay, let's bring John Payton on.
Mr. Payton. Going once. He
Of
was
course
on.
it's okay to talk.
Not, you have plenty more to choose
No,
from.
they muted me. Is it okay?
All right, there's Barry. Go ahead, Barry.
I just want to say one thing. I used to actually live in the backstretch, in the barn area, in the tack room. I started working. Who remembers Herman Carbone?
I do.
Okay.
Everybody
I
does.
worked for Herman, and who remembers the way Herman used to cook food? Sausage and peppers in the paddock. Ask Jimmy Marohn, he must know, and a bunch of other people on the line, they know. But I could tell you one thing. I'm sorry? I said a lot of people would remember Herman. I worked for Herman, then I worked for Jimmy. And I could tell you one thing. I learned some of the best experiences in life working for those two men. And very good guys. That's what I have to say.
Barry, you remember working for me?
Who's on the, is this Cookie?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I work for Cookie too. He's on the phone too. Yeah, him too. I learned a lot of good lessons from those three guys. I could tell you that. But I started out as a young guy, and I could tell you one thing. I worked for Herman, and I never forget it. I was washing the jock carts, and who comes driving around the black Trans Am? Jimmy Marohn. And he puts down the window, and he goes, "One day, kid, you're gonna make it. Keep working hard." And the next week, I went to work for him. I never. That's my story.
Thanks, Barry, for sharing that.
You're
Appreciate that.
I remember Roosevelt Raceway.
Cookie, go ahead. You jump in. Go ahead. Take it away.
I'm still racing. I raced in Roosevelt under Rolls-Royce stables, and you probably have 3 guys on the screen here who are the backbone of racing: Donnie, Jimmy, and Mike Forte. And I know that we're lucky that we are healthy, but we must remember in the past less than a year, we lost Eddie Annunziata, we lost John Brennan, and my dear friend Carmine Fusco. So, but times are still good, and I'm still
God
doing the
bless them
same
all.
thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Cookie, for sharing. Appreciate that. I'll jump in since he has his hand raised. So I'm going to let him speak, and you can lower your hand. Mr. Anthony, take it away. Just
I
unmute
wanted to
yourself.
bring Bobby Vitrano in. Where's Bobby Vitrano?
I'll get Bobby in a second because I just, George.
The king.
The king, jump on and take it away.
How are you guys? Good to see all you guys out there. I haven't seen a bunch of the guys from Roosevelt in quite a while. And for those close to me, they know that I've been training over at Belmont Aqueduct, Saratoga. I had a great year last year. 26 starts, 11 wins, 3 seconds, 3 thirds, 480,000 in purse money. I'm working over there with Mike Maselli, a good friend of mine. And I'm finding out that the runners are a great game, having a good time with it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us too. Miss your voice at Pocono Downs. So,
Well, you know, I have a gag order about Pocono Downs. I can only tell you that I was, you know, fired for no reason. That nonsense of finding Brian Sears a room for $89 was total rubbish. And I can only tell you that in the courts it was resolved. The case was resolved. That's all I'm not allowed to say. So you'd have to come to your own conclusion about what happened over there. So
one other positive story from Roosevelt.
Well, I've got a lot of great stories. I won the next to last race before we closed with a horse called Major Sam, who I won the New York Sire Stakes final. But you know, back I beat a horse called Maraba with Frank Popfinger. Is Pop on the line here? Probably want to kill me. You know what I mean? But you know, it was a great place to race. And what happened to Roosevelt, you know, really hurt us bad. It knocked out all of our Long Island owners. And by doing that, it hurt our business really big. You know, it was never the same when we lost Roosevelt. And you know, our attendance went down, our handle went down, and more important than that is the people who had a lot of interest in our sport, and they lost it. You know, and you know, I decided, you know, especially here at the Meadowlands in 2011, when Christie decided that he wasn't going to have a barn area anymore, and then you know, you see the demise at the Meadowlands only 2 days a week, and I said I got to jump off this ship because it's sinking, you know, and I did, and then I went into the broadcasting over at Pocono, and then of course later on. After the firing, I went over at full time over to the runners, which I'm having a really good time. It's been really good. It's kind of well, I'd say the end of my career. This is 44 years I'm training horses now. So, you know, I come to full circle of the things that I wanted to do, the broadcasting, the driving, the training, you know, the success, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been pretty happy. But the bottom line, as you guys know, you know, we talk about a lot of our friends who died from the virus. And the bottom line for a lot of our guys is our health, really, to stick around. You know, I spoke to Mike LaChance the other day and Lucian, and I spoke to Cat Manzi, Bobby Heil, of course, I'm always in touch with him. I saw Bobby V down in Florida this year, Joe Feraldo. So, you know, you like to get to see the guys, and we all have a lot of great memories because it was a great place to race, and it was a shame to what happened, you know, how it closed. Think about today with a casino there, what a great place to race it would have been. And you know, we kind of missed the call with that.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you jumping on and sharing that with us, George. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Freddie, who did you say you wanted to jump in next?
I was trying to bring Bobby Vitrano on.
Mr. V, where is he?
He might be under just Robert there.
He's on the second screen.
Oh, there you go, Bobby. Bobby, you can hear us? Bobby?
He's right below Kyle.
Yeah, he's not muted. Mr.
Bobby
Vitrano.
Vitrano.
All right, moving on to the next person. We'll get back to Bobby. John did jump on again. John.
Bobby?
Golden Blossom Honey.
Yep.
Matt, can you unmute John Payton?
Yeah, he actually was
Second
unmuted.
screen.
I don't know what. John, if you could hear me, just mute yourself, bottom left-hand corner, and yeah, you could give us a little bit of your background.
There he goes. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
Hey, John.
Going once.
going twice.
We saw so many people to go though too. Just keep John. I guess we'll get back to you as well because we cannot hear you. So Freddie, give me another name, please.
Okay, I got some phone numbers. I have no idea who they are. Who is 516-428-5725?
Gotta unmute yourself and whoever that is. Oh, there you go.
Freddie, that's me, Charles Martino.
Hey, Charles, how you doing?
Good, good. I had to work late, so I had to hit you up on the phone. I couldn't use the computer. It's kind of funny, very funny listening to people because I remember when Jimmy Marohn bought a king bike to get drives at Freehold because I was in Freehold at the time, and he had the king bike. You put Jimmy up to drive, you got to use his king bike. The first after the single shaft, the double shaft king bike.
Go King.
Yeah, and then it's funny because I remember when George Anthony bought Ernie Ernesto's at Yonkers one night. You know, great memories when you start thinking about everything we did. You know, you mentioned John Patton. You can't think of him without Flagcall. Great bunch of guys, really. But you know, great time, great atmosphere, never cutthroat. Everyone wanted to see someone do good.
Yeah, but it was good racing back then, and there was a lot of camaraderie.
I will tell you, the greatest story ever to me was the first night I paddocked, and it wasn't at Roosevelt, right? But it was at Yonkers, and I'm up watching a race, and Bobby Rayner's got momentum, and it's either a B1 or an 8-3, right? And the gate springs, and Bobby gets parked for his life, right? And Carmine slips out second over behind him going to the half. And they come around the top of the stretch. Carmine tips 3 deep, and they go through the stretch as a team, and Carmine gets up at the wire, right? So it's the first time I ever seen Carmine up close and stuff, so I'm waiting for him to come back to the winner's circle. And the horse's name was That Overload Bell. And he comes back, and he's hanging the lines up, and he's telling Buddy Regan, he goes, you know, I was hitting your horse, but I was yelling, come on, Momentous, because he wanted to see him win while we're going such a big trip. Because they were fans of the horses, too. And I think that's the biggest change in the game. The horses have just become a commodity, you know, and, you know, you mentioned Herman Carbone. You can't think of him without thinking of Grossman Lord. It's an amazing difference in the way the kids changed the game from where we had it to where it is now.
Well, I appreciate you jumping on again and sharing your stories with that, and even on the phone though too. Appreciate that, Charles.
Yeah, I wish I could have got online, but
no problem. You can still listen. I'm just going to put you back on mute because you got the car feedback on the in the cell phone though, so we can hear that. So, but we appreciate you sharing your story.
not a problem. I hope everyone stays well through this.
Thank you very much.
I'm looking at some of these names here, and who's Andrew Drill or whatever.
Who?
We have some of our investors on as well, but too. So
yeah.
yeah. So there's other. I'm trying to think of Just pulling names or two that who hasn't spoke yet. I want to get around to the. Did John get back on?
I lost John, and I didn't get get him on. So
Who is Leon? Leon a driver or trainer?
No, Leon is with us.
Okay, got it.
He's one of Rob's. He's one of our partners on our horses.
Gotcha. Anyone else? Let's see. Who didn't I?
I just want to say one thing. You guys talked about Gamwar and everybody at the table. You guys talked about Gamwar. You guys left one important person out. Old man Jimmy Cruz, who used to sit at the table with Delensko, Jimmy Marohn, and Burt Lang. Old man Cruz was a very good guy.
Oh yeah, Jimmy, one of our greatest.
Freddie, is Bobby Vitrano still on?
I don't know. I haven't been able to pick him up, and from the guys that called in, I can't identify them.
Freddie, can I say something?
Sure.
Just was thinking about the driver's room there at Roosevelt. You know how the camaraderie, that was a great word that I think Jocelyn used before someone. But in the driver's room there, I'll never forget John Chapman and my brother Peter coming off the track, and they were in their mud suits. And you remember the stall they had where they just shot you down with like a fire hose with your mud suit on?
I think everyone who raced there has been hit with that hose.
and then you could go get undressed and take a shower and then go out. But the days at Roosevelt were second to none, and I just loved it. I loved it. Makes my heart warm. Yes.
Can I say something a minute? The one thing that we truly forgot to say about is the track kitchen. Track kitchen was like a focal point for everyone, whether they'd lend money to all the grooms, and then they get paid on Friday. The grooms would pay back the money they owed on Friday. Everybody hung out there. The owners would meet the trainers for a coffee or a breakfast or lunch. The track kitchen was really a major portion of what Roosevelt Raceway was all about. It was a meeting point of everybody. Grooms.
Alan,
trainers.
did you ever get to the Wheatley Hills Tavern?
Yes, that was another place. It's a huge. Jimmy Cruz Jr. and Earl Cruz. That was their mainstay. They
Mainstay. Yep, for sure.
I think they lived there. I think they had a room somewhere. Still always there. Yeah, no, there was a lot of great places, but nobody mentioned the track kitchen. That was like, something, that's important to mention, how much it did for the grooms, the trainers, the owners, the drivers. People stopped there for whatever, even just.
It was nice when they put in those grooms' dormitories. They were pretty nice.
Yeah, you forgot about the poker games all weekend long in the grooms building. You guys forgot
absolutely.
About that?
And even in the
Alan,
paddock,
nice haircut, man. That's a fresh one.
we also had major poker games, and Henry and I would play gin all the time, and there was always something going on in the paddock, just to keep between the races, And the money was it was a lot of money they gambled for. It wasn't like nickel dime stuff. They really put the money out there.
Hey guys, when I first came down from Monticello, I went into the room there, and they were playing cards. Nick was doing his haircuts and stuff. And the first thing I looked at, straight out of Monticello, and I'm saying, my God, the grooms have more money than the drivers and trainers. They drive Cadillacs. The grooms were driving Cadillacs, and I'm saying, oh my God, this is like Disneyland. It was absolutely amazing. But everybody made money and stayed alive. It was really amazing.
I'm gonna come in and tell a Jimmy Cruz story, because someone just mentioned Jimmy and said we didn't mention him. Jimmy has 6 horses in one night, and he thinks he can win with all 6 of them. So he finds Lucien Fontaine, and this is before Lucien started driving. This was in 1958. So he gives Lucien money and sends Lucien up to the grandstands to bet on all 6 horses. So now Jimmy wins the first one, He wins the next one. Now Jimmy's getting worried because now he's like, oh my God, I got this money bet up there with Lucian betting on this. I got 4 more races to go. I can't possibly win 6 races. So he sends people up to get Lucian to cancel the bet. And nobody can find Lucian. So Jimmy goes on, he wins the 3rd one. He wins the 4th one. He wins the 5th one. And he wins the 6th one. And nobody could find Lucian to cancel the bets. So anyhow, Jimmy ended up cashing in on all 6 horses because nobody could find Lucian. And Jimmy was like the first person to win 6 races on one pari-mutuel card.
Mm.
And that was in 1958. And going back to the Wheatley Hills Tavern, if you went into the back there, they had the pictures of every single one of those wins.
Several years ago, before he passed away, he called me in to look at his house. And I went in. I never looked at his house because it felt like I was in a Hall of Fame. He had all these things. And I saw this poster and I said, what is this? And he said, I won 6 races in one night. And he told me that story. And it's like Joe DiMaggio's record. It'll never be broken. This record will never be broken. 6 races, trained and drove the horses. All 6 wins. That doesn't happen anymore. The trainer and the driver of all 6 winners for that night. Amazing, amazing accomplishment.
And only 6 starts.
Yeah. It'll never happen again. Never. Unless Ron Berg starts driving.
Well, we actually have some questions that came in, so I'm going to read a couple of them. I'm going to get to George had a question as well. I'm going to just jump in here, though, too, because most of you probably don't know who I am. I grew up on Long Island in New Hyde Park, 5 minutes from Belmont, about 15 from Roosevelt, and actually went there as a kid, though, too, and was there closing night. And I remember my dad telling me, my dad just passed away 2 months ago, so he used to take me there all the time and said, this place is not going to be open. He just knew, and we started picking up all the programs, and a lot of the guys I talked to now, they asked me, you have any of the Roosevelt Raceway memorabilia? Fast forward to several years later, I went to the flea market was there. I was there, Fortunatos, and I could go on Gamma. I used to eat there as a kid. I crawled into the paddock and picked up all the warm-up saddle pads, as many as I could, and I just started giving them to people. People asked me to get them autographed, and several of you have had autographed the stuff too. But the other things are just a memory going after Islander games, going to catching the last couple races with my dad. I mentioned the flea market, Fortunatos, promo event, which they don't do anymore at the other tracks, like pro wrestling was there, I remember, and the dunk tank. I know, Joe, I think you said when I know Jimmy Marohn, I think my dad actually dunked you, though, too, way back in the day. Little things as a kid, pretzels, knishes, hot soup. I always used to love getting there. Going under the gate to get free admission because I was only 10 or 11 years old at the time. And then, like I said, closing night, though, too. So I appreciate you, all of us, joining us on this journey, though, too, and keeping Roosevelt alive, because I'm an amateur driver. If any of you don't know, I'm one of the bigger amateur drivers at over 200 pounds. But I love racing. I've been doing it now for 8 or 9 years. I've been following it since I'm about 6 years old. And I've also dabbled in thoroughbreds, but I love harness so much more, where a guy of this stature and didn't come from anywhere in the industry could actually race against pros, and got my first win in Monticello in my 9th start. I think Mr. Forte might have been in my race as well. And it's just a pleasure to relive some of these stories, and so the Gamma going there. My aunt works with Joe in real estate as well, so it's a pleasure that all of you could join us. And
does anybody know what the hole was? The hole.
Oh, that was the sand track.
I think we all know what the hole was. I think
Right.
Fridays is there now.
Yep, it was the training track, Matt.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't the training track, Billy. It was the track that you had to go down the hill to
Down the hole. Yeah. Yeah.
Where Fridays and all those places are.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
And then years later with Mirage, if any of you still live, I worked at Mirage for 4.5 years as a doorman as well, and that's no longer there between Houlihan's and Fridays on that strip. But let me first question I'll jump in into, and then Charlie, if you have anything to add, let me just get one of the questions in. This actually this was from one of our investors who had to jump off. Freddie, this is for you, actually. He said, in the history of the Roosevelt Raceway video you sent us, you mentioned scandals that rocked the business back then. How did those scandals compare to our recent one, and do they see it as harder or easier to bounce back from the current one? What did it take back then to get the game back again on the right path?
Okay. I think that the scandals from the past probably contributed to what's going to take place in the future or the present. But I think that the present ones are more crucial at this point because we don't have a fan base left anymore. And so I think it can really hurt us a lot more than the previous ones. We've lost our fan base.
Hello. The next
Hello.
question comes into for Mr. Forte, actually, from Joe. He wants to know, do you have a solution to the empty, this segues into the last question, have any solution for empty grandstands at Yonkers?
I don't. I mean, it's something I've been thinking for years, and if I had that answer, I would have shouted it out. There's just all racetracks have less attendance, and Yonkers has very little. A lot of people
Mike.
watch the races, but they don't attend.
Mike,
I don't have an answer for that.
you know what happened? There's too many options. You know, people, it used to be the only game in town, and now it's not.
Well, little things like no more Westchester County Fair. When I was a kid, I used to go there. I love watching the races, go on the rides. They don't do a lot
Loved
of
it.
promotions like that, you know, and you don't see any of the tracks. Some of the tracks that I race at, the fair tracks are better than, I mean, race at Goshen every year. There's more people there than there is at Yonkers. It's sad and scary, but it's a reality.
With no betting.
Exactly. And, you know, and I've raced at the Delaware Fairgrounds, and those tracks where people love racing, even a small track like Vernon, where they draw more people. I mean, a lot of people don't bet up there, but they come out to watch the races. They make it a family event. And I just wish more tracks. I mean, I consider myself one of the last generation. I'm 45. But a lot of my friends who are younger, they all think about thoroughbred racing. They say, oh, you're too big to be a jockey. I'm like, I try to explain to them the business, and just, they don't get it. But George, I'll let you jump in here with your question though too. So go ahead, George Anthony.
Hello.
Hey, Bobby
Hello.
Vitrano. I recognize
Yeah.
Jimmy Cruz, when we were talking about Jimmy Cruz before, one thing was omitted, that all of his wins, those 6 wins on that one great night, they were all double-digit numbers. They weren't chalk. So every horse paid at least $10 or more, which even makes that feat more tough to do. It was an amazing feat by Jimmy.
George
And he was
Anthony.
a great horseman, great horseman. Yeah. Billy Haughton, my man.
I got to tell you, I didn't mean to interrupt any moment on there on Jimmy Cruz, but I had one of the greatest nights of my life with you when you presented the trophy for the William Houghton Memorial to me.
I remember
when Matt Scooter won.
Yes, I
and
remember
he was
very much.
so awesome. Mike LaChance, Matt Scooter, and you
Yeah.
looked good. You had that long flannel coat on, and we were freezing. You were interviewing me. I didn't have a coat on, and it was good.
You made me look good. You were next to me there with that hairdo, you know. And for all you guys that are watching, you know, there's no better golfer. You can't play golf with this guy. He bars every hole, and he makes you sick. He makes it look too easy. But yeah, that was a great night. Great horse, you know. And
Eisenhower Park. Remember, Eisenhower Park was right next to Roosevelt Raceway.
you know what I did that night with Matt Scooter that was fun? I stuck the microphone in his nose, if you remember. And I said to that guy Gary upstairs, I said, he can talk too, this horse, and he's telling you that he's a world champion. And it was a good line. I had a lot of fun with him, and of course with Mike LaChance in the winner's circle, and I'm always with you. You know, we always.
What did he win by 8 lengths? I think he won by.
Winning by that many, but I remember.
I think he won by 8. And Armbro Feather, I think Armbro Feather, if Kopas is still on, was second. And what a hell of a mare she was, right?
The best race that I did when I worked for ESPN was the International Trot. That great mare, and who came from dead last to circle the field 4 wide on the backstretch, and that was one of my best moments in broadcasting, I think, for sure. You know, but I had a lot of.
And who was the winner? Who was the winner, George?
A lot of hats. I worked, you know, at the at Roosevelt, assistant announcer, and then I was behind the Bullet, Bob Meyer, and he just passed away. And he was a great guy, Bullet. And I used to tease him all the time, you know. For a lot of you guys, he'd say to me, "Hey, what did you do today?" You know, and I said, "Well, I went to Manhattan today, and I bought a record." He said, "Well, what did you get?" I said, "I went to Tower Records, and I bought Bob Meyer's greatest hits of all time." He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I only had to buy one record. And he wanted to kill me. But in jest, you know, we got along really well. And Bob was a great guy. He loved the game, of course. And, of course, he got into that demise where they cut him loose. And he was never the same after they cut him loose. He was never the same. But for 20 years or whatever the heck he was at Yonkers, you know, it was good to know him and to you know, serve behind him, you know, and everything. So, you know,
How
I
did you
had a
get
good
the
time
name?
with all the
How did
guys.
you get the name the King?
Well, come on, you guys know the story, you know. I'll tell you what happened one night. And Jimmy Marohn, I guess he's on, right? He's on?
He's on some. Yep.
Yes,
Yeah,
go
of
ahead.
course.
King, King.
What happened one night was, I guess Bobby Howell's on too, but one of Bobby Howell's owners asked me one night that we were racing. I was in the last race with a horse, and I don't remember the name of the horse, you know. And he said, how do you like your horse tonight? And I was always very free giving horses out. I didn't care. You know, if the horse is going to pay $4, I don't give a damn if he's going to pay $3.80 or $3.60. Who cares? You know, yeah, I like my horse in the last race, got a good shot, blah, 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 blah. And Bobby had a horse in there, and that was one of his owners. And I don't recall the owner that asked me. But anyway, the gate unfolds, and I leave out of there strong. Luke drove the horse. I remember that. And here comes Bobby's horse from the 7 or 8 hole or 6 hole, and they get into a nasty duel, like 27, 54 and change. And I know at the half I'm a dead duck. And I said, Jesus, you know, I said to this guy, I like my horse. And he asked me a question. He said, are you going to go to the front or come from behind with your horse? And I said, I don't know if it really matters. He can kind of race both ways and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, after the race, I'm like furious. You know, I think I finished 4th. Bobby, I don't remember, might have been 6th or so. Sure enough, the next week we get back into the same event. And I think I drew inside of Bobby. I think I had maybe the 3 hole and Bobby had the 4 or the 5. And I said to Luke Ouellette, I don't care if you finish last. If that other horse gets the lead in this race, there's going to be trouble tonight. I'll tell you right now, I'll take you off everything. And I don't care if you go 26. I don't care what you got to do. And that usually wasn't like me. I didn't like to take races out on the horses. It's not one of my things, but I did it that night. So anyway, the gate unfolds and Luke gets the lead very quickly, and Bobby's horse sits behind me. And we finished 1-2, but Luke was able to rate the horse, and he opened up in the lane, and he won the race. So obviously, it was the last race of the night, so I came into the room, in the locker room, you know, and I'm getting undressed, and I was kind of ruffling my feathers. So I said, attention everybody in the room here. When I want to cut a mile here at Roosevelt or Yonkers Raceway, I'm going to cut the mile because I am the king here. That's for all you guys to know. And Jimmy Marohn was with Regine, and I don't remember a couple of other guys. They had their towels because they just took their showers. They had the towels around their waist. And here comes Jimmy around from wherever he was behind me. And he starts going, King, 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 King. And the next thing I know, there's about 6 guys chanting the King, 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 King. And it made the newspapers in I don't know, in a few days later or a week later. And it stuck with me. And of course, we always played it up, as you can see the
there it is. Yeah. What about the rat tails?
The Meadowlands made a great poster of me. It showed me in front of a castle and all of that stuff, and it wound up being one of the biggest sellers at the Meadowlands. And I was never the leading trainer at the Meadowlands, you know. But look, I had a lot of fun with it, and even now, my colors at Aqueduct and Belmont, my colors have a king's crown in the middle. So I kept the moniker. So it's because of Jimmy Marohn yelling and screaming, King, 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 King. So that's where it started. So, but it was fun. Hey, a lot of guys had nicknames, and it was great to. It's
everybody
good
had a nickname.
You know? It was always
everybody
good
had a
sport. Yeah, but it was good for the sport, you know. So you got Slugger McIntosh, and you have Lush, and you have the Red Man, and Storm and Norman, and you know, talented Ted Wing, and we can go on and on. You know, it was good for the game. It was good for the game, and you know, when I went to Pocono, and there was a couple of guys that, you know, had their own nicknames from the Meadowlands, but I added a couple, like Matt Kikali, supposedly. I called him Special K. And some idiot at the racetrack who worked inside said, you know, Special K is a drug, George Anthony. I said, you're out of your mind. It's cornflakes, man. You know, Kellogg's cornflakes, and you got to talk about a drug. I mean, this was the mentality that was over there. And look at their demise. You know, their handle is bad and everything that happened. When I was working there, I'll tell you, we were building up a really good clientele. Their handle was about 40 some odd % or close to it in excess of before when I worked there. I'm not saying it's all because of me, but there was a lot of good people that got, you know, the races were good. We had a good presentation on TV. We handicapped the races. We took a lot of time
TV
to
was the
make
key.
people money, and it went all down the drain, you know, it went all down the drain. But there's nothing like the racing in New York. There was nothing like racing at Yonkers and racing at Roosevelt and all the TV shows. I still speak with Spencer Ross every like once a month or so. Great guy.
Roosevelt
Spencer
was the
just contacted me. He's doing well. That's nice.
Who,
Yeah, I got a
Spencer?
question.
Well, you know, he's not working really, you know, and he was doing a pizza commercial for the John's Pizza. What is it? You know,
Papa John's.
Papa John's. He was doing a voiceover, but he's getting passed over when it comes to doing like college basketball or pro. And Spencer did every single sport in New York, every single sport except the New York Giants. And I don't know if a lot of people know that he did the Jets, he did the Knicks, he did the Nets, he did a lot of great things. And he's a great guy. When you sit down with him, he's got one story after the other, and it's always good to see him, you know, all the time.
Charlie, jump in there.
Yeah, I want to jump in and ask a couple of questions to drivers. Whoever wants to answer is more than welcome. You know, today, you know, I'm at Yonkers a lot, and, you know, I warm up at night, and there's nobody there. There's maybe 50 people outside. I go back, I look at some of the photos of Roosevelt back in, I guess, the early 70s when you guys were driving, and I see, you know, 20, 30,000 people a night. Describe what it felt like driving in front of a mass of humanity. You know, you guys probably had attendance there like you did at Shea and Yankee Stadium back in the day.
Can I say something quick?
Yeah.
Can I say something? It's Billy Houghton.
Billy.
You had to wait online to get in to the racetrack, and then you had to wait online to get out. But if you knew somebody, like I knew this guy, Eddie, he was the head of valet parking. Thank God. You know, I gave him a good tip every night, but we went right up there, and that track was so beautiful. That entrance at Roosevelt Raceway. Freddie, you remember going up the elevator to the Cloud Casino with the escalator? It was just so beautiful. It was state of the art.
I remember Eddie too.
You remember Eddie? Yeah.
And I also remember one night when your sister parked her car in the parking lot over there, and Jackie Lee is on the microphone there. Well, the owner of the license of the red, whatever it was, the car with the license plate, the Whiz, please come to and turn your engine off. You've locked your keys in the parking lot with the engine running.
That was my sister Holly. Yeah, God bless her. My one and only sister. She's the baby. Yeah.
Anyway, back to my questions, guys. Yeah, tell me what it was like driving in front of 30,000 people. How exciting was that?
Oh, Freddie.
I'd like to answer that. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
It's Bobby Vitrano.
Yay, hey, Bobby.
Found you, Bobby. We've been looking.
How you doing? I was having a hard time getting in here.
There you go.
You made it.
Yeah, listening to all these stories brings back some great memories. Some bad ones also.
Yes, sir.
You know, to answer this question, the last question that was asked about how you feel racing around a crowd of people like 30,000 people. Well, actually being in a race, I would actually hear coming around the 3/4 pole into the last turn, you could actually feel the track surface actually shaking, and the grandstands actually just roaring with people yelling, screaming. It actually hears Jack Lee announcing the race. It's nothing as it's not a great. It's no greater feeling than that. It was like a fantastic feeling, and the excitement of it was fantastic.
So Bobby, I guess you didn't have to pull the plugs then with all that noise, right?
No plugs then. We had no plugs then. I don't remember plugs back then.
Okay. Wow.
How you doing, Freddie?
Good, Bobby.
Southern style.
Southern style. Yeah, Southern style. Yeah, he was a nice horse.
Bobby, I got another question for you since you're on, Bobby. So I think back, I don't know, mid-'70s, a good mile at Roosevelt, I guess, was around 56. Does that sound about right?
What time? What year is that?
Like in the 70s, mid-'70s, let's say. Minute 56. Was that fast?
I was going about 2-3 at that time.
Not that fast.
Not at that time. Okay. So my question is today, you know how fast they're going. If you had the new race bikes, the lightweight ones, the aerodynamic ones, how much faster do you go back in those days, do you think?
You probably pick up a second or two, but you know, the horses today are bred differently than years back. You know, the horses are much better bred today, and they're much more handy. The horses that I drove in my time in the early 70s, I started racing at Roosevelt and Yonkers about 1973. And at that time, you had all the top drivers then. You had Buddy Gilmore, Carmine, Lucian, Chapman, Delinsko, Hervé, Henry, Frankie Tagg, Norman, the Popfingers. These guys were the best. You're only as good as the horse you're driving. Yeah, but with these bikes, they'll step up a horse here and there, of course. But the breeding, I think, now is just a whole different ball game here. And you got just much better quality horses today. And of course, the bikes and the equipment, that changed somewhat. And also, they made the racetracks much harder than they used to be. But that's my feeling.
Bobby, you know, nowadays they only have a gas pedal. They don't have a brake.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Hit the gas pedal and go, and that's it. Keep going. And whoever lasts at the end, that's where you're going to finish.
And Bobby, I got one more question for you. One more question for you, Bobby. The driving styles vary greatly from then and from now. I mean, you guys were literally right on top of the horse's rear end. Today, they're much further back. They're not sitting straight up in the bike. They're leaning back. What a difference. Do you guys think you could adapt if you were to drive today to the current driving style, or do you think yours were the better way, maybe safer? Just compare the two for me.
Well, I think today, the years back, the driving style was much better. You have more control of the horse. You're closer up to the horse. You're not further away from the horse in front of you, where you can make a move tight, a tight move, and you're just nice and snug up between horses. But today, the way they race today, I mean, the guy looks like he's laying down in a lounge chair. I mean,
once. We actually have one of our trainers on.
Mike Forte.
Yeah.
Are you laying down in a lounge chair racing nowadays?
You're a lot further away. There's no it's almost like you're in a jock cart.
That far back. Donnie, jump in here.
Excuse me?
Donnie, and then after that, one of our trainers, Rob Harmon, has a question as well. So Rob, just let Donnie answer it, and then Donnie, how would you be driving today, though, too? Leaning back or slowing to your older style, or?
He's got to unmute himself.
Yep. Bottom left, Donnie.
Lower left.
There you go. It's still muted, though, too, but we'll get back to your answer, though, too.
Joe Ricco. You recently won a race up in Monticello, if I recall.
About a year ago.
Are you
I really don't drive steady. Once in a blue moon, I get like the urge. I miss it a lot. I really do. The bike is different. Like Mike said, you know, you're sitting back.
That's it.
Like in the jaw cart.
Just here.
I try to emulate these young guys leaning back. I just can't do it. I just, And especially for me, I think it's just a habit. But like, especially going into the first turn, I mean, if you're leaning back, it's kind of hard to see what's going on, you know, if a horse makes a break or something. So I kind of tend to not be able to do what they do. I'm not going to knock it because they're very successful. I don't know if it breaks down on the wind resistance. I'm not a physicist, but I have a hard time doing it. I try to emulate it. I can't do it.
And Donnie, your
But
thoughts?
I can tell you this, it's not like riding a bike. There's a lot of things I can't do, you know, that I used to do. So,
And
you know.
when's your trotter going to be racing?
He trained today. They're hoping that they can, whatever opens up, Tioga or someplace, or if Yonkers opens, qualify him with the Meadowlands, you know, we're going to try to race him there. You know, naturally, I'm probably not going to drive him. You know, I did have the win with him, you know, last year. I was happy about that, but you know, it's funny. Buddy Gilmore taught me this years ago. It's a young man's sport. You know,
Donnie, your take on that as well?
Well, my feeling is that when they're hooked out, and you can hook the horses out even further is what they're doing. And they're leaning back. It's putting anybody that's in the back further and further back. And they're not riding right up tight on the guy's head or shoulder. So they're back maybe a quarter to a half a length each. So when you figure from where you're sitting, so you're on top, to the horse that's sitting 8th or 9th, they're way back. They got no shot. They got no shot in the race. They're actually putting them out of the race. And that I don't agree with.
Gotcha.
Well,
And Rob,
I know guys from back in the older days of racing. If you lean back like that, Dick karate chop you and knock you down.
Yeah.
Mr. Harmon, jump in with your question.
Hey guys, what's going on? Hey, this goes back in 2004. I was racing at Windsor, and on Wednesdays we had qualifiers, and usually Wednesday nights, Sire Stakes. And this is one of the first years Bill O'Donnell came back, started racing back up in Canada. And I didn't know he's going to be there. I stayed over after qualifiers to race at night. And I used to always ship over with Butch Dokie, which you guys remember. And
Merit.
I didn't know Billy O was going to be there. Billy O we went to lunch, me and Donnie Rankin, and he says, hey, I got somebody going to school. We went to lunch, and Billy O and Butch would not stop with Roosevelt stories. They were telling me about a story. This is a third. I'm just going to, you guys probably know. They used to do interviews. Drivers go up there in the callers, I guess, upstairs. I've never been to Roosevelt. So they do driver interviews. And Joe says, who's going to be going with me? And they said, Hervé. They go, I'm not going up there with Hervé. He said, and I guess that night is the night they give away Frisbees. Did they do that? Billy O told away Frisbees. He says that was the worst thing they could do the night that they interviewed Hervé. He said they were all over the track. I don't know if that's true, but that's the story I was hearing.
And verify or deny that?
I take it wasn't true. But that's the story that Billy was saying. Him and Butch was going back and forth. But I could sit there. They must have went through 4 or 5 stories. I could sit there listening to them guys and watching them guys talk. Their eyes, and they smiled like it was just. That was in 2004, so it had to be 12 years. The track was gone, right? And them guys just, you could see it was just them guys talking to each other in Windsor, Ontario, outside Windsor Raceway, talking about Roosevelt. So that was neat for me to just listen. I just sat there in the dark and just listened to them. So.
Mr. Anthony, you got another question?
Well, not a question, but you want to talk about a guy who gave back all the time, and was Hervé Filion, the greatest ambassador of the sport for us and for me, especially if you look at YouTube and you see the Hervé Filion raps, which I did with him. It was the first time a driver ever had a microphone in a live race that we did. That was, oh my God, 1988 or so. And it's got like 25, 30,000 hits. And he always gave back to the sport. He was great to interview. The fans loved him. And he was very colorful with great great stories about Hervé. He was always a master of promotion for our sport, which is what we needed at that time, and we need it now. We need it now in the horse racing. You know.
Did you? It's Billy. It's Billy again. I just was wondering if you saw the race that Hervé was in, where he's talking during the race.
Yeah, that's what I did on TV. I was the first to do that.
That was great.
It was a great piece at the time because it was unique, and like I say, 30,000 hits, and people, and the first race that he was in, he lost, and he drove a horse called Christmas, and it was July was when we did that show, and the great line was, "There's no Christmas in July," and then in the next race that he won, Donald Double D, my man with the big mustache there, I like that stash there, Donnie D. He had to lead the horse, and Hervé drove a horse for Perry Steinkohl, and you made a jump in the right after the first turn, and then Hervé took the lead with the horse, and he said, "It's going to be all gravy from here," you know. And then he told the people before the race, "You'll be traveling with me," and things like that. And you know, when OTB first opened up, like in the Capital District, up in upstate New York, Hervé got right on a plane. We went up there. We promoted the sport up there. He was always a yes man to do things for the game. He always.
But George, you know that was the beginning of the end. You know that was the beginning of the end.
There's no doubt about it. You know, I mean, let's face it. But you know, in this day and age, 90% of the betting now is being made. Now, let me say this: look at this coronavirus type of thing. If people weren't able to bet offline, I mean off track rather, what would happen to racing now? Not only thoroughbred racing and harness racing, we would be in real dire straits. So you got the racetracks opening, and of course a lot of them are depending on the casinos for a lot of revenue toward the betting. I know at the thoroughbred at our track, Roosevelt, I mean at the Aqueduct in Belmont, that we 38% is the number that they came up with that we lose from the casinos, and about 7% on the online. So you can imagine today that if you only had to go to the track, and now you have this epidemic, well, you're going to be closed indefinitely. So I'm glad to see. I mean, there are pros and cons. It's a modern day age now. People don't want to think of this. I'm in Fort Lee, New Jersey. I go to Belmont every day or every other day, really. And I'm paying $35 in tolls for a 20-mile trip. And people can't do that. People can't do that if they wanted to come to the races 5 days a week. $35 in tolls and $6 or $7 in gas, and then they're coming in, buying a program, buying a hot dog, buying a Coke, and before they even open their eyeballs, there's $60 in the hole. A working person can't do that. So he takes that same $60. He sits in his room. He watches the races on TV or on his phone or wherever he's got, and he's in action. And then at the end of the night, he turns it off and he turns over and he goes to.
Okay, it looks like we might have lost George Anthony there.
Well, and Freddie, I have a question for CeCe, actually. CeCe, what would your dad think of racing today?
Well, I think that he would be very sad. He loved the sport. He loved the horses. And I think with all the problems going on with people being indicted for unethical treatment of horses, I think that would really hit him hard. And he would probably have put a stop to that before it would have gotten to this level as well. He would have put his foot down and done something. I trust that he would have done something to make this a better world for horses, a better world for racing. And I think that he always looked ahead, and he always found a way to make things, you know, he was a visionary. He had to fight tooth and nail to try to get Roosevelt. He begged, borrowed, and stole everybody he knew to make it go. It was no, and he had a vision, and he wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I think he would be looking ahead to see what could be done to bring the fans back to Roosevelt, to make it interesting. You know, in the beginning, there was no way to get the fans there. He literally had to pay their way. He would go get them and send, I think he would go pick them up at the train station and bring them there and buy them dinner so people would come to Roosevelt, because he wanted to generate the excitement. And I think he would be looking to see what could be done nowadays that would make people want to come to the track, would make it more interesting for them. And I don't think he would have just let it go downhill the way it did and let it just die out, because he believed in it, and he believed the fans could still be there if people put the time, energy, and thought into what it would take to bring them back. So, you know, I for fear of sounding like, you know, hey, my dad had all the answers, he didn't. He fought hard for what he believed in, and he believed in harness racing. So I think there would have been some kind of push to get things back on track.
I gotta say, I used to ride those buses that used to come. I lived in Brooklyn, and after the last race, if you lived in Canarsie, you get on that bus, it took you home. So there's a lot of ways to get to the track.
A lot of people used to do double headers. You remember in the day, they'd go to Aqueduct during the day and Roosevelt at night. Crazy. Yeah. I wanted to ask CeCe, did her dad have a particular cigar that he liked? Because I never saw him without a cigar.
I don't think I have a picture of him without a cigar.
Right?
No, he used to, there wasn't a certain brand, but George Kleinman, does anybody remember George Kleinman?
Yes, yes, yep. And Kenny Kleinman, his
and Kenny Kleinman. George Kleinman, I don't know what his position was over at the airport, but he did something at the airport, and he used to somehow get these Cuban cigars brought in for my father, and we'd have humidors all over the house with these Cuban cigars. And I can picture the little label, the little gold label on them, but I don't know what they were called.
Well, CeCe, I'll start with you and then ask the rest of the panel. I've been asking this for the last couple of weeks, and like I said, I'm very passionate about the sport. If there's one thing that you could foresee to make the sport survive long term, whatever it is, promotions, what would be something that you could do or envision? And I know it's not on the spot question, but we're just trying to get, I've heard from different horsemen totally different answers, and we got a totally different group on here, the two that's been around for the great days of racing. So to make that survive for the next 10, 20, 30 years, what is one thing that you can get fans? I know with the technology, you're able to bet online and things like that, but like for the younger generation, those teenagers, those 20 and 30-year-olds, what's one thing you think you could implement if you were in charge today?
Well, you know, you sort of have to look at why is thoroughbred racing so popular? You know, people know those horses. People know their names. They know their stories. I think we need to do some kind of publicity and some way to make it more accessible for people, so nobody knows what harness racing is. They don't understand it. We need to, you know, maybe get some people to be more in the spotlight so that there's more attention on them. You know, the horses and the people involved in it need to be a little bit more focused on them, so people can identify them as not just celebrities, but as, you know, everybody knows
CeCe.
American Pharaoh.
CeCe, how old was John Henry?
And the press needs to publish some stories and get people human interest stories in the people and the horses that are involved in them. And once you get that, that'll generate. And even, you know, like somebody mentioned, making it more family oriented so that the people know that this is something you can do with your kids. I'm sure, you know, kids out there know about thoroughbred. Everybody knows Secretariat and all these horses' names. I don't think the general public can name one harness horse, one standard bred. So,
And you know why, CeCe? Because we retired them too early, so many years, at age 2 or 3 to go to stud. We didn't have a John Henry that lasted to age 10, or all those other thoroughbreds that raced Well, of course, they were geldings,
No,
but
they all race when they're 2, 3 years old, and then they go to stud. They don't have
Right.
long careers. They just
No.
have the
So
fame.
how can
in the
how can
spotlight.
you familiarize yourself with a name, a famous name, if they're retired already? You can't. You need to have these horses race longer.
Well, that could be too. But I think that we really need to put our heads together and find out how we can get these horses spotlighted and get them out there. And, you know, maybe it's going to take, Freddie and I were talking about a couple ideas yesterday, actually. And, you know, we're going to talk a little bit further about it. But I don't see any reason why thoroughbred horses should be all known and standard breds nobody has a clue about. They're lovely horses. The people in them are lovely, and we just have to find a way to, you know, get a little bit more media coverage and make them more accessible to the regular people.
So I'm gonna jump in over here. See, one of the things that happened in our sport was that the day that CeCe's dad died, our sport quit marketing. He was the person that marketed our sport. He made our sport. He took it from the backwoods of racing at the fair circuit and made it the fastest growing sport in America.
No question.
And the day that he died, harness racing stopped promoting it. We are experiencing right now 40 years of non-marketing our sport. And we have to really, to save the sport, we have to fix all the problems. And there's 100 million problems with the sport. And then promote the sport. But we can't promote the sport till we fix the problems. And one of the things we have to get rid of is the drugs. Yeah. But
I think that's been addressed, Freddie, but we need marketing.
Harness racing is not marketed the way thoroughbreds are. I mean, my friends even tell me all the time that too. It's sad and scary. And you know, if I was in charge, I'd run it a totally different way though too. But the king, it's your court.
Yeah, you know, I agree with a lot of what you guys are saying. You know, and all the years ago when we had the 20 and 30 and 40,000 people a night at the trots, they just thought it never was going to end. And I don't think they poured enough money into the marketing aspect to keep things going along, you know. But let's look at what's happening now. We right now have just witnessed a very bad scandal in our business and the thoroughbreds as well, with a lot of indictments as we know. And you know, take a look at the harness for now. And not that I'm biased now because I'm with thoroughbreds. I'm just saying, where's the harness coverage? Remember years ago, we used to have a guy that would talk about every single race and handicap every single race. You know, in the daily news, I don't think they even have harness racing in the daily news anymore. And they've taken it out of you might just see entries, but you won't see selections or picks. And
you froze again.
Ed Binnewig. Anybody remember that name, Ed Binnewig?
Yep. Good reporter.
Who was he, Freddie?
I think I forget which news.
Newsday. He was a handicapper for Newsday.
These horses are basically, as you know, and you guys are all horsemen as well as me. These horses, they were treated better than they were a human being in the Hilton. I'll tell you. I mean, we took good care of our horses. We cherished coming in the morning and taking care of them and the best of care. And the public doesn't know that. They have a misconception that we're abusing them and whipping them, and you know, well, they're wrong. This kept kind of like a fire that just kept on going, you know, and nobody did anything about it. We need, like CeCe said, family sport. Families have to do things to get the kids interested a little bit. When I was a teenager, I couldn't wait to go to the races. I just couldn't wait to go. And I started with the runners. And then, of course, I went to the harness only because I became an announcer. And I was looking to really announce in the harness, in the thoroughbred business. And I didn't get a break. But then I got my first break at Ocean Downs in 1977. But going back to the publicity aspect of the sport, we gotta let people in for free. We gotta have some kind of a promotion and for children and things like that. But think of a lot of things that have happened in the sport. We talk about Roosevelt Raceway closing, which absolutely killed us in Long Island. It took so much of our fan base and owner base away. And then you come back here to Jersey and you got the Meadowlands, which is the mecca of the sport. We had the greatest horses, the greatest racing and harness racing has ever seen, that really put us on the map. And what happens? You get a governor like Christie who hates racing, wipes us off the map, and really he destroyed racing in the state of New Jersey. And it's hard for a Meadowlands, which is the mecca. I still believe, I mean, they do $3 million a night in handle. But when you think about only racing 2 nights a week, and then you look at the cards and you look at the quality of the horses, you don't see too many big names. You don't see too many big races anymore. And a lot of the big drivers are not there. You don't see Mike LeChance or the Manzies or the Ron Pierces. And, you know, a lot of people identified with these kind of guys, you know, and you know, the sport lost a little bit of its luster. Not to say that some of the drivers today aren't great, they are, but a lot of people lost faith and a lot of people lost interest, and it's hard to get it back, especially with negative press and the negative things that have been going on recently. It's a tough sell.
Well, the thing as I was a kid is watching the shows on Friday and Saturday night. You don't have these shows anymore, though, too. I mean, like I love all sports. And just to watch that as a kid, you know, you don't see that anymore. Now even the Meadowlands after midnight show.
So true.
You know?
It's Billy. I'm sorry I had to interrupt, but
that's all right.
Friday and Saturday nights they used to do a WPIX. George, do you remember them? Channel 11. My parents would let us stay up late to watch the opens. I remember Porterhouse, Ty Silk, Duke Rodney. The Pacers were Irving Paul, Stephen Smith, Royal Rick. Do you guys all remember them?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Irving Paul and Royal Rick, I think they were full brothers. And Sharon's, I'm not sure. They're all full brothers. And they raced in the opens, and Saturday night was wonderful. Who was the announcer? Marty Glickman, right?
Right.
Marty Glickman at Yonkers. What a great announcer he was. He did high school sports, college sports, everything. And he loved
one of the greatest of all time.
Great.
At Billy.
Yeah.
At Roosevelt, wasn't one of your first jobs that you used to have to take the pictures down of the wins and hang them up?
Oh, no, that was it. Okay, so now I get to commute from Long Island to Yonkers. It was at Yonkers Raceway.
Okay.
And I had to go over the Throgs Neck to the Cross, you know, to the G up the Buppa and get up there. And they used to hang the photo finish pictures in a box on the wall after the races. So here I am, 14 years old. Milt Taylor was the judge upstairs. So they'd give me the picture and I had to run down and tack it up inside these boxes. And I had to be escorted by the police because people were mad and they were yelling at me that I moved the finish line. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh no, that horse didn't lose by a nose. He won by a nose. I was like, what? I said, it's just my job. I'm sorry. I'm just hanging a photo. You know, that guy's, it's crazy.
We had another question coming here, but before I get to you, George, and this comes up a lot with me as well, too, so this question's kind of funny. It's Joe wants to know, does the weight of the driver mean anything? Look at George Steinbrenner at the Meadowlands for a celebrity drive event versus, say, me at about 181 pounds versus Charlie. Any thoughts? Anyone want to take that?
It's a muddy track, yes.
But I do get that question all the time because I'm over 200 pounds and a lot of my amateur associates are 150, 140, 160. So any other driver on here that want to take a stab at that to explain to
Jimmy
Jimmy, there you go. Jimmy and your son though too. You know, me racing against one of you, I got a good 100
I
pounds.
think I really think that being a tall fellow myself, that it was always an advantage for me as far as a half-mile track and reflexes. I thought that my reflexes may have been quicker than a heavier set guy, like leaving the gate, getting out of a hole, something like that. Maybe being second over, tip 3 wide. My reflexes, and then if a turn came up, I might have a slight advantage in a turn. That's about it. After a horse is going, if I was next to a guy at 200 pounds and he had a better horse, I wasn't beating him.
Jimmy, how much did Frank Safford weigh?
Oh, I don't know. I wasn't around then.
300 pounds, Billy.
260.
Yeah. But that was my thought always about the reflexes.
One of the funny stories is when the Meadowlands up, they were the first track that decided to weigh the drivers. Previously, before that, you just put down whatever weight you wanted to put down. I raced at, when I was 180 pounds, I was still listed as 160 pounds. But at the Meadowlands, I guess it was Jack Quigley decided that he looked at the drivers and thought that they weighed more than what they were showing in the programs. Inscott went from 120 pounds to 166. I'm in the locker room, and Eddie Cobb and Mike Gagliardi come in. They're covered with mud. Mud adds like 20 pounds to you. And they're going on the scales to weigh for their driving weight.
George, you had another question?
Yeah, when we were talking before about promoting the sport, I want to share that. Around 1987, I said to the Roonies, we got to get on TV. We're starting to dwindle in attendance. We're starting to dwindle in the public awareness of the sport. And in 1988, we started the TV shows quite a bit. But jumping ahead of that, in 1991, I did the first, along with Ellie Sarama and Bruce Beck, and we did the first show on ESPN, which was a nationwide show. It was a great idea for the sport. It was the first show to show all the stake races nationwide, and it was our best opportunity to show what harness racing was. We showed some of the great champions, Mac Lobel, I remember as one of them, and Matt Scooter, and a whole bunch of horses. That lasted a year and a half because we couldn't get a sponsor. The sponsors were saying, well, we'd like to spend our money better on baseball and football and basketball and college baskets, etc. And there was a big meeting with the USTA, and I said to them, there must be a way that you can raise money, because cheap shows are not cheap, they're expensive. I said, we can't let this die because we are on national TV for the first time. And they really didn't care. And they said, we don't have the money. They didn't want to try to raise the money. And that show died. And again, things like this, a little bit here, a little bit there. And before you know it, it becomes a big chunk that you lose, And that was, I think, a damaging moment as well. When you're in the media and you're out there, radio, TV, newspapers, people read, people see, people say, hey, I might want to take a ride and go there at night. I want to see what this is all about. When you're out of sight, you're out of mind.
Out of mind.
And I have one other question, though, too, and it's if anyone else has any questions. If not, we'll wrap it up. You guys have been going on for 2 hours or two, so we appreciate that. But since George brought up ESPN, the one telling thing to me was when Hervé passed away on the ESPYs, they actually had a little memoriam of him too, which I thought was great for for people that don't know the sport. Most of the rest of the world of the U.S. So that was telling. That was appreciative that they did that. The question for all the drivers that raced at Roosevelt or anywhere, give me one name, toughest driver that you raced against.
Clint Hodgins.
Mike LaChance. Mike LaChance is the toughest guy I ever raced against. He wouldn't give you an inch, and he won't ask for it. He wouldn't. He was tough, but he wouldn't ask for an inch, and he wouldn't give an inch.
Anyone else? Jimmy?
Yes, I'd have to.
O'Brien.
I'd have to.
O'Brien, my dad said, would put a wheel under you in a second.
I'd have to go with Hervé and Michael Chance also.
Yeah. Bobby V.
Oh, I'd have to go. I agree with Jimmy Marohn. Yeah, Hervé and LaChance. They were very tough
Because you
competitors.
guys don't remember Joe O'Brien. You're too young.
He's before my time, my friend.
Mike?
I will tell you, the one that I heard was the toughest to race against was Henry Thomas. Henry Thomas would come along, and he had this physical strength where he would come along and he'd grab the arch of the bike and he'd flip you out of the bike.
What?
Yep, flip out of the bike.
Isn't
I'll
that
tell you
illegal?
another driver who was really tough out there, believe it or not, is Henry Filion. I thought he was
great. Elmsford.
Yeah, it sort of rings a bell.
Great mare, open winner many times. Henry was a great driver. Good
Without
horseman.
it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Guys, here's another one that I wanted your feedback on. I went to Roosevelt in the 70s and 80s with my dad, and I saw some amazing horses there. Some of the great ones I saw were Oil Burner, Handle with Care, Cam Fella, Niatros, and Ramblin' Willie. Give me some of the greatest horses that you've ever seen compete at Roosevelt in the 70s and 80s.
Over trick, over call.
All my time, okay.
Speedy Scott. Well, don't go there.
Niatros.
I would
Well,
have to say Niatros and Mike Forte. I think in 1980, you and I drove down from Monticello with Eddie J to watch Niatros win the Messenger.
Yeah.
You remember that night? It was, I mean, we drove all the way down, not all the way down, 2 hours, but we went down and went to see Niatros. He's probably the greatest pacer I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, he
I
stands
agree.
out. He's the secretary of harness racing. He's just
I agree.
the
Greatest
first horse that comes to
standard in
you,
history.
even though he might not be the fastest now or the biggest money earner, he's the Babe Ruth of harness racing. Nobody will forget him.
Mike, who's one of the toughest guys you raced against? Current or
Well, I agree with Michael LaChance to be one. Donnie Dancer was a very competitive driver. But for the most part, my recollection is how well I was treated as a young driver by the older established drivers. I just think, I got treated great by them. And that's one thing that comes to mind when you ask me that question.
And Donnie and Jocelyn, I just want to hear your thoughts on that. Donnie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Hervé was definitely one of the greatest drivers all around. No matter what kind of horse he was driving, he was always a factor. And you could never, throw him out. You had to watch him. Great driver.
But like the lines dangling going down the backside.
And Jocelyn?
CeCe Levy, give me three of the best horses you've seen at Roosevelt in the 70s and 80s.
I'm afraid I'm at a disadvantage. I don't know all these horses like these guys do. I have no idea. I just keep going back to Jamin.
What was that riding horse you had back then, CeCe?
The one that ran away with me on the track?
No, the one that you had. You had a riding horse that you had. I forget his name, but you had a riding horse that you had for a long period of time. It was your favorite.
Well, the horse that I had for years and years and years was named Samba. And I got it from Mr. Quinn. Does anybody remember? I believe his name was Tom Quinn.
Yeah, he lived up in Old Westbury.
Yeah, he lived really close to us. And I think, was he a paddock judge or something?
I think he was security.
Yeah, I know he worked at the track.
Yeah, he was a retired cop, I think, and he was security or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got this horse from him, and I had him for like 25 years. His name was Samba. He was my first horse. My mom got him for me way back when. But I was just a kid when a lot of these horses were racing, so I don't really know them as well as you guys do.
And you guys, I'm sorry, I stepped away for a minute. Can I just say something? It's Billy. I was so honored. My brother Peter, God bless him, he won the Roosevelt International 2 years in a row, back to back. I don't know of any greater feat, but I do remember Undame and CeCe mentioned Jamen.
Jamet,
That
yeah.
was the first Roosevelt International, wasn't it? 1960?
59.
59. And there were 40, how many thousand people there, Freddie? 42?
About 54,000.
54,000 people. They were parking at Orbach's, across the street, down the highway, taking cabs. And everybody saw on the Meadowbrook Parkway the lights. Remember the lights from Roosevelt Raceway?
Yep.
Everybody knew what that was.
There's the picture of the horse.
There's his portrait.
I love it. I love it. Oh, there he is. It's beautiful. Beautiful. I like the Courier knives behind you, CeCe, and I have several myself.
Oh,
They're-
thanks.
They're
Yeah,
priceless.
there's another one up here too.
One day we'll compare notes. That would be good. You know, and I owe you a lunch at Gianni's,
Where's that?
where we went in Pompano
Oh, the place that we went to with
with
Charlie
Lucian,
Novak and
with Lucian Fontaine,
Yeah.
and a whole bunch of people. We had a good time.
Well, I was hoping to see all you guys after I got done working down in Florida, but things took a different turn than we could have expected, and I had to head home a lot faster.
Well, I hope sooner rather than later that I get to see you.
Yeah, I was planning on seeing Charlie and all of you guys, and
Yeah.
I had to find a flight out of there pretty fast. So
Yes, understood.
Hey, Jocelyn, just give me your answer on that. Like, who's by the way, Jocelyn and Joe Ricco were two of the guys as a kid that I got whipped from too. So thank you for that. I still have them as well. It's funny though. The one I got the most from was actually Donnie. Couldn't get one from you. I tried many a nights too, but the only time I got LaChance's whip was in a thunder and lightning storm, the last race, and my dad came out there with me and he yelled at him and he threw the whip to me though too. But Mike wouldn't give his up either, no matter if they're broken or not. But
Very cool.
and
Matt,
Sonny
are
Patterson-
those whips behind you? Are
No,
those
these-
whips?
This is my first one I ever got, and my first driving win. Guess what this is from?
Yeah. Is that a
still
training whip or a driving? Let's see.
It's one of the old ones. It's an old Telflex.
Yeah, yeah.
This was from Pierre Veracruz. I
know Pierre. I know him very well.
He was in New York for like maybe a month or two. He won a race.
USSE.
Yep.
Very Pierre.
Yeah.
Great guy.
He was a little kid, a young kid. He had to be his early teens or early 20s, and he threw the whip at me though too. It was like brand new, but
He's a handsome man from Paris. Good guy.
yeah.
Yep.
So he's still racing. I still see his name around, but Sonny
Me too.
Patterson was the one who gave me the most whips, and he always told me to go down. I had to run down to the end of the top of the strap, and then he'd throw it. I saw Sonny years later at the old Louisville Dance too, because my
I
mom.
don't think we're going to be busy Monday.
And he was down there, and I said, Sonny, what are you doing down there though too? So Freddie was trying to get him on tonight too, but I don't think he got on. But it would be nice to thank him as well. So, but Jocelyn, just give me your answer. Who was one of the toughest guys?
I think the chance got cheated out.
What was that?
I think Cash tried to get in, but he couldn't get in. So
Okay. And Jocelyn, who was one of the toughest guys you raced against?
Well, Herbie didn't beat the horses. He beat the drivers in the race. That's how smart he was. He made everybody made moves before they knew it. Herbie, without a doubt, is the best ever, and no one will ever match him. I mean, he's a friend of my father's that also, but he was definitely the best. Like I said, he beat the drivers in the race, not the horses. On every race he's in. He raced in my hometown. He raced anywhere, and he took horses that had no shot, and he just still made people moves in the race, drivers, that they never anticipated. I don't know how to put it any better than that.
Who won the most horse races in the world ever?
It's a guy from Sweden, isn't it?
No, I think it's Hervé Filion.
Hervé won.
The other guy you're talking about is from Germany. Heinz Wuring. Heinz Wering. It's Wewering, but Hervé beat them all. Am I right?
Well,
Who am I thinking?
Dave Pallone has the most lifetime wins.
Right now,
Pallone, Pallone, you're right. He beat Hervé.
Back to 1980, Charlie.
Yeah.
You're right, Charlie. He beat Hervé. You're right.
The thing with Hervé is I was always amazed because as a kid, he used to travel around a lot. Like I was up in Foxborough in like 72, 73, I was up in Green Mountain, and he would come up there.
Vermont?
Parnell, Vermont. He would come up there with a helicopter, and he would drive on a Sunday, and he would drive horses that would finish in 5th, 6th, and he didn't win them all, but he was be 2nd and 3rd. He just improved every horse. He was definitely amazing. But I tell you, we do have a guy here, Donnie Dancer, who had a lot of wins, and I'd like to hear him talk about some of, because I know like he come up to Monticello to drive when he was going for the driving title for United States. As a matter of fact, he drove a couple of horses he probably doesn't remember. For me, you know, in those driving things, you know, they used to use them. Donnie, like you would go against Eddie Davis, Hervé, and it was Daryl Bessling from Chicago or something. I think you up one year.
USSE.
Yeah, you were up against him one year too. How were some of those things going on? Like, you know, trying to race against them and trying to strategize.
Well, same thing. You would look at the way you thought the race would go, and then it was always good when you anticipated how the driver normally would drive with the post positions or the horses that they would race. But I'd have to say, of everybody you'd race against, Hervé definitely was one of the greatest of all time because of the kind of competition, the horses that he would drive. He didn't have always the best horse in the race, but he always seemed to put himself in a spot to get the most out of the horse without beating the hell out of the horse, you know? And he would bring a horse back to the trainer. And if you were like myself, I was a young guy going up, I used to study him as a kid because I'm like, what is making this guy so different? And I mean, I was lucky enough to grow up in one of the greatest families to watch all the dancers, but I'm like, what is making this guy such a winner? And I would study him. I'd even cut out of high school and go to Freehold and watch him drive, you know? And to me, he was just a strategist. He could drive a horse in many different directions, different dimensions, let's say. He didn't have to go just down the road. He could adjust quickly to any situation that occurred during the race. And that's hard to race against, you know? And I learned from watching him. And then that's what made me better, I feel, as a competitor, especially when I ended up racing against him, is not letting him beat me, but being able to compete against him and use the same strategies that he's using against other guys. And I idolized him. I thought he was one of the greatest of all time.
I idolized him too. He was great. Yeah.
I got a question for Freddie. I got a question for Freddie Hudson.
Okay.
Freddie, just a thought. How many of these guys that are on right now could we get together for a Roosevelt Raceway tribute race to be held at Yonkers Raceway before the first race? Is that a possibility? Would you guys still be interested in doing something like that if Freddie can put it together and convince someone at Yonkers to do it?
I'm all for it.
I think that'd be fun. What do you think?
What's the purse?
It goes to charity. It goes to charity. It goes to the charity of the winner. How's that?
Let me tell you something. We tried when we did the Roosevelt Raceway reunion in Pompano. We tried to do a race where we're going to have everyone come in, the old drivers and everything come in and race in our mutual race. The racing commission stopped it on us because they wanted each driver to pay $160 for a license to race for one race, and everyone basically pretty much gave them the finger and said, "To hell with that."
No kidding.
George, we can talk to you guys for like hours upon hours. Someone just jumped on to 732 number. Who is that?
Repeat that again.
Someone just jumped on a 732 area code number.
Hey, that was me, Bobby Vitrano.
Okay, Bobby. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, Bobby, where'd you go? You left us?
I lost you and back again.
That's it. Well, we can talk to you guys for hours though too. But George, I'll give you the last word though too, and then we'll wrap it up though too. Because I said I enjoy this. I could talk to each and every one of you for hours upon hours. But George,
What are you doing tomorrow?
Hervé had one of the greatest sayings that I never forget, and he used to say, there were two of them. One was, the only race I can't win is the one I'm watching on TV, he meant when he was sitting in the lounge and he didn't have a drive. The next one's going to be good for Billy Haughton and Jimmy Marohn. Sometimes you'd play golf with Hervé, and the ball would be about, maybe 7 or 8 or 10 inches from the cup. And you would say to Hervé, that's good, right, Hervé? No problem. He'd always turn to us and he would say, and Jimmy will appreciate it, put it in the cup. I think you'll feel a lot better.
Go in the hole.
He did. Yeah, you'll feel better when it goes in, Jim.
That's what he said.
Yeah, you'll feel better when it goes in.
Yeah. And I think on that note, we'll wrap it up here. But again, thank you all for taking over 2 hours of your time tonight to reminisce. And
Thank you, Matt.
As the things continue to go, I mean, we'd love to have you guys on in the future. Hopefully be racing live in the next couple of weeks. But thank you one and all, and we appreciate you for tuning in.
All right, guys, good idea. Thanks for writing me.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Very awesome.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks for doing this.
Bye,
You're
CeCe.
welcome. Thank you.
Good seeing everybody.
Bye now.
Bye now.
Bye.
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 Next time I'll get dressed.
Good health, everybody.
Woo. Ooh, baby.